fellow Oregon Duck. And for those who are wondering who is this amazing guy that's in front of you today, a little bit of background about Steven is today we're going to discuss easy optimizations you can make to boost your organic search visibility and highlight key analytics you should monitor for performance. And a little bit about him, Steven leads the SEO and analytics team at Gravitate, a Vancouver-based web design and growth marketing agency. From startups to Fortune 500 companies, Howsley helps his clients better understand their audience, their digital performance, and learns how to capitalize on organic growth opportunities. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Steven Howsley. Steven, tell us something that you're proud of. Tell us a badass thing you've accomplished.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, first of all. If I had to pick one thing I'm particularly proud of, it's that I built and sold my own small e-commerce business. So I know exactly what it's like starting from, very minimal marketing budget and building something up kind of from scratch. And although it wasn't a particularly big exit or huge business success even, I learned a lot along the way. So that I'm most proud of.
Yeah, so we'd love to hear, tell us about the journey of how the heck you went from this guy in high school or college to being able to freaking build a business and sell it. Like, did you always knew you wanted to build a business?
Startups and doing side businesses has always been something I've been interested in. But I think for me, it really started with an itch to educate myself and really wanting to be an expert in what I did in my day job, which was digital marketing, SEO, analytics, website building. And so that kind of just started by sort of scratching my own itch, but also following a passion. I've been interested in music outside of work or just in general in my life since I was a kid. So this is a way for me to dig in and learn a little bit about what it would be to start my own website, but also, doing something that kind of aligns with my passion, which was music. It was a music related business, I should clarify.
So you found a way to monetize your passion. I mean, not many people know how to do that. How did you figure that out?
So this came about through learning about music licensing. It was a music licensing business. And as I was working at an ad agency, I learned about how artists can place their songs in commercials and how they can get royalties and get paid for that. And that started making me wonder, I'm like, oh, wait, you can get paid for putting music in commercials? Like, how cool. So that was just how I became aware. And then from there, it was digging in, talking to people in the industry, making connections with folks I didn't even know through email, starting to understand how things work, looking at different businesses that already exist and start to think, could I do this on my own? Could I do this better? What resources do I have? What do I need to learn to start my own business? And over a couple years of trial and error, finally got something off the ground.
I love that quote you just said is, can I do this better? And I think that, there's a story of like a TED talk that talks about the importance of the first penguin. And the analogy is like in Antarctica, when all the penguins are thinking about going for a swim, a lot of them are scared to jump into the water because obviously there's, I don't know if there's not sharks in Antarctica, but there's a lot of orca whales and seals that are ready to eat them. And no one can jump in until that first penguin jumps in. But the beauty of the first penguin jumping in is the other penguin's going to go, I wonder how I can swim differently or swim better to avoid the orcas and the seals.
Yep.
And so I love that you had the courage to say, what could I do better? And then you actually went out and you did it.
Yeah, exactly. Try it anyway.
Yeah. And so, well, you did it. Yeah, you built it and you sold it. Did anyone help you with that journey? Because I feel like a lot of people believe that you have to go do things on your own. So tell us about that experience.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I think people, in my immediate life were always encouraging, and people I knew personally, but moreover, staying motivated through books and other content out there, people I don't even know. I think, learning things on YouTube, there's plenty of digital mentors, I guess you could call them, out there that served me along the way. So people like yourself too, and close people like yourself that, run similar businesses or e-commerce or digital businesses that may not be in the same field, but, talking with people that are at your similar stage where they can empathize with you and help you along the way. it's always really good to surround yourself with other like-minded people.
Yeah, and I know that you want to dive in and share your screen and talk about
Sure.
grow the
Yeah,
business.
let's talk about how to grow the business. If there are questions you have along the way, would love to answer those, because really, like, I know what it's like working with a peanut rinky-dink marketing budget, but I also know what it's like to work with a multi-million-dollar marketing budget. So I between my own ventures and then being at the agency in the marketing world, really have that full spectrum of knowledge of, like, I know what it's like to have $0 to spend. I know what it's like to have multi-million-dollars to spend. So, as we're kind of going through this, if anything comes up, or if you want me to like narrow in on a particular kind of business, I'd be happy to do that.
Yes.
So let me just do a screen share here, and we'll start getting into things.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to share my desktop, and can you see this leveraging search to drive business?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to keep tabs on time because I do have about 30 minutes, so maybe save a little bit of time for Q&A as well, if anything comes up. So we'll talk a little bit more about me, some context, like where I spend my time in my career, where I'm going. Then we'll talk about the concept of digital ecosystems, talk about analytics and how measurement is super, super important in marketing. Then we'll talk about different SEO and search tactics, how businesses, whether you're small or you're enterprise, can leverage search to really drive performance. So a little bit more about me. I grew up in the Northwest in the Vancouver, Washington area. I've always been interested in marketing. As Andrew mentioned, went to the University of Oregon, interested in skateboarding and golf and playing music outside of work. But my day-to-day is really supporting really high, fast-paced enterprise startups. So I work with a lot of heavily funded startups, but also established businesses, e-commerce businesses, and a wide spectrum of things, which is a lot of fun. My next role is actually, as I'm transitioning out of working in agency world, as I'm moving in-house over the next couple of weeks to REI. This will be my first chance to work in-house with a very large brand, specifically with marketing analytics. So I'm really pumped about it. I'm not in yet, but I'll be in there in about 2 weeks, and
Awesome.
we'll get my hands on some really even higher spend marketing budgets and more complicated marketing budgets, from retail to digital e-commerce as well. So clients I work with now, and I have worked with over the past few years, here's a handful of them, mostly focusing on search engine optimization, which is showing up in Google search or Bing search. Believe it or not, some people use Bing or DuckDuckGo. There's one search engine I've been using lately called Ecosia, which is sort of like a eco-friendly search engine. So SEO stands for search engine optimization, so it doesn't have to be Google. And that's all about ranking organically, where you're not paying ads for search terms that might drive traffic or drive leads or revenue. Also do a lot of UX research, split testing, and what we call conversion rate optimization, which would be testing layouts, version A versus version B, what's getting more engagement, what's getting more conversion. Could be things like testing button colors, could be things like testing layouts or verbiage on a website, and using statistics to really optimize a web experience. And that comes with time. There's no need to really do that as a very early stage business, but as you get more traffic on your site and more marketing spend starts happening, you want to start to optimize that. So here's a couple brands I work with now. So let's talk about digital ecosystems. So the reason why a website is so important is because that is an asset that you own. So if you think about other areas of marketing, like let's take Facebook, for example. There used to be a time when Facebook was a business tool. It was a free tool. Of course, that wasn't Facebook's intention, but businesses could create a profile, they could post things, and people would see it. Now the organic reach on Facebook is next to nothing, less than 1%. of people that follow your business page will actually see your content. So you have to pay to play there now. If you want people that even follow you to see your content, you got to boost your posts. If you want to engage new audiences and prospect, you got to pay for that as well. And you could think about that in other advertising as well, display advertising, even search advertising, and frankly, sometimes even with SEO, your website will show content on the search engine results page, but not actually drive the user to your website. It might just give you the results right on Google. I'm sure you've seen that. And that's happening more and more. And the point here is that these media companies and these marketing outlets want you to stay in their ecosystem as much as possible and to pay to play. Whereas your website is like truly one of the few things that you own, that you can control the content, you can control the experience, you can control the offers, how long people stay there. And that's an asset. That's something to think about as like the hub for all of these other supporting channels. You should always be thinking about, how could I drive traffic to something that I own? Because when I get them to my website, I can then, put a pixel on them. This is getting a little bit more technical, but I could put a pixel on them or put them into an audience or capture their email so I could, remarket to them down the line. A little harder to do that on your social profiles and other things. And that's kind of where like the idea of like full funnel marketing comes in, and knowing what channels to use when, because we have all of these channels available, and it's hard to do everything at full force. And you may not always want to, right out of the gate, spend all of your marketing budget on all of these different channels. Sometimes it's helpful to think about your audience. Think about, is this something that is currently in demand? Is this something that people are searching for? Well, if it is, then maybe we need to start looking at search channels, because when you're searching for something in Google and Bing, DuckDuckGo, you are coming with intent, meaning I have to come into Google and I, as a humanoid, am typing something in, and that's because I want to get something. I want to learn something, or I want to buy something, or I want to inquire about something. That's really powerful in marketing, because that's sort of like coming into the store and saying, like, I need to buy a new pair of gloves, and I'm going to go to the glove aisle. Like that, you already have intent. So search is a wonderful place to start with marketing, and you can pay for that intent, or you could do organic search marketing for that intent. And ideally, you're doing a little bit of both there. Then on the other side of things, on the top of funnel, we're kind of talking about like driving volume to a website. You have prospecting and social. So when you're on a social profile, or on a social platform rather, like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, you're scrolling and you're kind of passively consuming content, and then you can get hit over the head with a promotion, right? So you're getting targeted and getting prospected where you're not intentionally searching and you're not really looking for something at that very moment. You just happen to be in the right audience set. And as the business, you can say, we want to target people on Instagram that are of, this demographic, or this psychographic, this interest. And we think they're a good fit for prospecting. You could also throw LinkedIn ads in here as an example, which works really well for business to business type of marketing. So just kind of think about this concept of intent and prospecting. Not that either is necessarily better than one another, but just knowing what tactic to use when. A really powerful social tactic and display marketing tactic that you can use is remarketing ads, because in a way it does solve for intent, and you can target through social, which tends to be a little bit cheaper than search in terms of advertising. And it qualifies for intent, because if you're remarketing to somebody that has been to your website already, and you could qualify these ads by saying, if somebody went to the site, they spent more than 30 seconds on my site, if they went to these pages, but they did not go to these pages, and set up all your rules for remarketing. Even if you have a really itty bitty remarketing audience on Facebook, Instagram, Google Display, that already has, qualified, that set of users is already qualified in a way, because they've spent time on your site, they're interested in what you have to offer, but they haven't quite converted yet. So we need to nurture those guys. Um, Ultimately, when it comes to marketing, emails are still, one of the main currencies of marketing. So if you can capture an email on first interaction, um, whether that be a gated piece of content, whether that be a newsletter sign up or an offer, getting that email is gold, because now we have a direct line of communication between you and your customer. Whereas with search and advertising and all these other things going on, you don't have a direct line of communication. You don't have a name. You don't have an email. So you're going to have to pay for that engagement, or sort of work to get that engagement. Whereas if you have an email, you can, within reason, get in front of that person regularly and nurture them through email, with almost a guarantee that they'll see it. At least they don't have to open it, but at least they'll see your message. So that's kind of a long-winded way of explaining the ecosystem and why having a website and really thinking about that experience and analytics is so important. Any questions on that, Andrew, or should I keep trucking?
Yeah, can you go into, I'm not sure if this is also part of your presentation, but yeah, when it comes to the email captures, I'm sure people would love to learn, how do you set those up? What's the best way to capture their email? Yeah, you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I would say that it depends on what type of business you have. And if you're a business to business, the typical way to capture email is through gated content, or we call them gated assets. So webinars that are gated perform very well for business to business, especially if they're partner webinars. White papers can do well if you're more of a technical product. How-to guides, if you're a SaaS product, are really good. Think about, what would your customers want bad enough that they would give up their email? Because people are smart. They know they're going to get harassed with marketing. So think about what would be good enough for where I'd want to give up my email. So that works. That's a little bit of context on business to business. And e-commerce wise, what can be really effective would be just couponing, like sign up for our newsletter, get 10% off your first order, things like that, or buyer guides or quizzes a lot of times. So, complicated e-commerce products or websites might have a quiz that you submit that will help you qualify and find the best mattress for you, the best, toothpaste for you, whatever it is. You submit a bunch of questions and you have to put an email in to get your recommended products. So bunch of tactics out there. One good way to think about it is get a list of your top competitors and look at their site, see what they're doing, try that out.
Yeah. Okay. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah. Keep trucking on.
Right on. So let's talk about experimentation. So, and that's really what great marketing comes down to, is trial and error. You're not always going to put in $1 of ad budget and then get $2 back. In fact, that's really, really rare in performance marketing, where you'll get efficiency, as in you'll get a return on investment. That's not normal in marketing. Very, very rare in performance marketing, as in talking about a particular campaign. Most often you're putting $1 in and maybe you're getting 50 cents back. But if your business is structured in a way that supports recurring revenue, that's okay. If you put $1 in and you get 50 cents back of revenue for the first month, but you have a subscription business or something like that, and they're going to come back and purchase 3 times, well, over the course of 3 months, if it was a 50-cent subscription over 3 months, you put in that $1 initially, but at the end of 3 months, you got $1.50 back, and then they tell their friends, and then they sign up and they sign up. So you have to think about marketing as lifetime value of your customers, and not getting frustrated or hung up, especially if you're a small business with, man, I put in this money into Facebook or Instagram and it didn't work. Facebook doesn't work, or Instagram doesn't work, or Google ads don't work. The thing is, everything works. It's just at what cost? What cost does it make sense for your business? Sometimes in business to business and B2B, the to generate a lead, a good lead, could be in the hundreds of dollars per lead or form submit. But if you're selling a high ticket product, if you're selling a high ticket software, you just got to do the math a little bit. So if you're willing to spend $300 per lead or form submit, and let's say your close rate is 10%, and you get 10 form submits, so there's $3,000, and your close rate is 10%. So you get one of those leads actually in the pipeline for sales, and maybe you close them. If you have a high ticket product, there's a chance that that business might be worth more than $3,000. So this is kind of important to keep the big picture in mind. And over time, the idea is that, yeah, it's not, experimentation isn't efficient, but marketing can be over time. You might find the right size of budget for Facebook and Instagram and search, and over time, you can adjust things and say, well, search is working really well for us, so we're going to put all of our effort into search marketing for now and kind of get that really efficient, and then start experimenting with a different channel. That's typically what I'd recommend, is just like really dial one thing in and get it to a place where it's efficient enough, and then start to add additional channels down the line. Yep, but it definitely is frustrating. I understand if you're a small business.
Yeah.
Basically, it comes down to this flow, this kind of never-ending cycle of increasing site traffic, diversifying where that traffic's coming from, and then understanding where the right offers you should be, like where you should be placing the right offers. Because sometimes when you're prospecting, like, I'll back it up a second, because there's efficiency and optimization within individual channels, and sometimes it's not the channel, sometimes it's not the targeting, sometimes it's not the messaging. It might just be your offer, or it might just be there are a bunch of factors, right? So you have to experiment and try these things out. So for prospecting, or in some cases with search, you might want to experiment with like a mid-funnel conversion. That isn't your primary conversion, but it might be a way to capture that email, right? And you could call that a win. And then you could start to put value on emails and say like, oh, well, if I get this many emails, and I eventually I convert 1% of my emails, then you can just reverse engineer how much that email is worth over time. So don't give up. It's what I'm getting at. Try different channels, try different offers on different channels, and be pretty rigid about it. It's definitely can be a little bit of a science. Let's keep trucking. One thing that I learned with my business is you can have all this marketing, and it's something I've learned with a lot of businesses actually. The worse your product is, the more expensive it's going to be to market that thing. If you have a really, really good product, people are going to talk about it. People are going to share with their friends. It's going to be easier to sell somebody on an awesome product that's like, oh my gosh, I want this. Like, I definitely need this. If it's something that is just like adequate, if it's just as good as the competition, which is where I landed for a long time, is I had no value proposition. I was just another music licensing company for my small business. And it's something I see a lot of times with emerging startups in the software space, is that they have a good solution, but the market demand isn't there yet because the market hasn't identified that need or is not aware of the solution. So if you're in that camp of like, I've got a really good product, but nobody knows about me, you're going to have to spend more money too, because you have to raise awareness. So think about that a little bit. Good products, that's one of the best marketing things you could do, frankly, is have a good product, a good price, know who you're targeting, and just really, really dig into that. So over time, you can be more efficient with the way you're tracking things and in marketing analytics, getting more detail on where those journeys happen, where the best channels happen. And there's a lot of great resources out there on attribution modeling, on using, things like Google Analytics and Data Studio. And as you get more sophisticated over time, eventually, let's say for a B2B business, you could say, oh, well, Andrew came in He's a lead, he's a deal that we closed. Like, how many times did he come to our website? When he came to our website, like, what was his first channel that he interacted with? Was it LinkedIn? Was it Facebook? Was it Google? And then how many more times did he come? Did anybody else from his company show up? And then you could start to kind of build a story around these leads and deals.
Like this, like how do you know who's showing up to your Facebook, Instagram?
Yeah. So with B2B, using CRM tools like HubSpot or Salesforce or Marketo, there's a bunch of CRMs out there that give you that detail and analytics and various costs. It's not necessarily a perfect science, but those tools are good. If you're looking at things in aggregate, like if you're looking at as an e-commerce business, knowing like where people started, what channels are driving revenue, et cetera, you could use a free tool like Google Analytics. And if you take a course over a weekend, you can get to a pretty good spot where you're able to drill into, what is working, what's driving revenue on your site. And that can all happen for free.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep. So let's talk about SEO a little bit, because I think that's a really practical thing. It's a practical marketing tool because it really doesn't, if you don't want it to, it doesn't need to cost you anything. If you want to work with an expert business or an expert consultant, it's going to cost you a chunk of change. But really, it's one of those tools that if you want to self-educate, if you want to produce the content on your own, you could be very successful with pretty much minimal money investment. And when we're looking at businesses that do well in SEO and organic search, kind of comes down to like three things, in my opinion, in my experience. One, your site has to be technically sound. It has to be crawlable. It has to be fast. It has to be mobile responsive. It's got to have the right, boxes checked for files and all that technical SEO mumbo jumbo. And really, that's not a hard thing to do. You could Google technical SEO best practices and get a list of like 10 or 20 things to check. And once you have that squared away, you're good. That's sort of table stakes. I would emphasize that page speed and mobile responsiveness are more important now than they have been in the past. So just keep that in mind. Optimizing your images using a tool like Google's Page Speed Insights or another tool called GT Metrics to run your site through one of those tools and kind of get a performance audit. Those are free tools that you can use. And then beyond that, your site has to be trusted in search. There are things that go into your site ranking beyond the technical component, and does Google trust you? Are you trustworthy? Like for my small business, I was trying to compete with Shutterstock and a bunch of other very, very large companies that they're going to rank in Google search because they've been around a while. They have a lot of backlinks. They have a lot of social mentions. And that is a harder thing to control. As a business that's newer, you could get more backlinks. You could do more press releases. You could do more guest blogging, more citations. But it's a hard grind. So I don't like to emphasize that too much, because what I found is that if you have the best content, you're going to be able to play ball with bigger websites. So if your keyword research is on point, if you think about, and keyword research as a whole category of SEO, basically just saying, what are people typing in that are popular search terms? A bunch of tools out there for keyword research. My favorite's called SEMrush. Moz is a different tool. Ahrefs is a different tool. There's some free ones out there called Uber Suggest and Answer the Public. Those are a couple free keyword tools. Some Chrome extensions out there called Keywords Everywhere. That's another free tool. But the idea is that you organize these keywords starting with intent, thinking about, okay, well, if I'm a public speaking coach consultant, what terms could I organize by page, and how can I target that term and use a variety of it, make it seem natural, create the best content, the best experience as I can. And if you create good content, in my experience, you can outrank or play ball with major websites, which is really, really cool, because the Google favors the user experience over authority. So here's some additional ways to get more backlinks, just as a practical slide here. If you want to take a screenshot of that, please do. This is a way to get more authority built up if you did want to pursue that. And if you're a very new domain and you do not have any backlinks, you got to do something here. You got to get some backlinks. You can't have zero. I would, definitely get some. If you want to, Google won't trust you if you have no backlinks is kind of what I'm getting at. You got to get a couple at least. So Andrew, I got to ask you now, when do you use search? When do you type things into Google?
Every day, several times a day.
Yeah, what are you looking for?
Oh, man.
What drives you to search? Maybe not your particular search history, but what makes you want to go to Google? Yeah.
I love sports, so checking sports stores, checking products. I just got engaged, so checking wedding stuff.
Yep.
Checking local news stuff. So yeah, it really kind of varies on what's going on that day, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'd probably venture to guess that when you are searching, largely you're probably looking in these two buckets. You're either looking for content, you're trying to learn something, you're trying to consume something, entertainment or information, or you're shopping around. You're this little cute little raccoon guy over here with this little cart, and you're just looking for something to buy, to inquire about. So obviously information is important. There's a lot of informational searches on Google. In fact, those make up the bulk of searches. And what's interesting is that this drives the bulk of the volume. These longer tail searches, as we call them, when you're trying to learn about something, that's where you're going to get the volume on your website. And those tend to be lower to mid-level competition terms that you can acquire easily. But the thing is, those rarely drive the money, right? Those rarely drive the leads in the short term. So when you're thinking about this content, think about, I need volume on my website because I want to remarket to them on Facebook. I want to capture their email. I want to, link to these higher value pages. But you also need to have those higher value pages too, because you never know what is going to work. So kind of what I'd recommend doing is getting a good mix of these going in a regular schedule. Like maybe every month you're making, for every one transactional page, maybe you're making 2 informational pages or blogs. When I was making my stock music business, an example of this would be I would create a transactional page for stock music for corporate businesses, stock music for advertisers, stock music for school, stock music for fitness videos, and think about those different terms. And then that's happening on the transactional side. Then on the informational side, you could create blogs for things like how to pick the right stock music track, things like 5 things every video creator should know about yada yada. And you're kind of interlinking with those transactional pages to show Google, hey, I'm not in it just for the money. I'm really like an established thought leader in this category. And when Google sees that you're not just creating those money pages, but you're creating educational content, you're providing additional value, and then they tend to favor your transactional pages. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of strategy.
Yeah, no, I like that. So you're saying most people create informational content, but we should focus more on transactional content.
Find the right mix. Find the right mix. And when you're creating transactional content, make sure it's solving for intent. Like maybe getting a little research behind your pages wouldn't be a bad idea. Throwing, in fact, a really good method would be throwing a strong competitor into one of those tools like SEMrush or Moz or whatever, and you can see what is working for them. You can see what types of pages, what types of terms are working well for them. That might steer you in the right direction to saying, of all the hundreds of transactional pages I could make, could I be smart about it? Could I, start with these 20% that are going to drive the most results based on what competitors are doing. Something to think about too.
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. So that comes into like this idea of do competitor analysis, keyword research, organize that stuff, build the brief. This is not required, but if you wanted to, really be good about it, you could build a spreadsheet or a brief and saying, here are the terms I'm going to target. Here's my primary keyword, my secondary keyword. Here, I'm going to plug those terms into Google and see what's, I'm going to see what's working. If I'm going to type in public speaking coaching into Google for your business as an example, is one of the things you do. What's working? Let me look at the top 5 or 10 results and just kind of go through them and seeing what why is Google ranking these pages? Is it the content? What's going on here? And then based on that, you could say, how could I do it better? Back to what we first talked about. How could I make it better? So looking at competitors and saying, based on the thing I want to rank for, how can I make it better? Could I add more content? Could I add a video? Could I add an FAQ block? Could I make my page a little bit more user-friendly, whatever you need to do? Or could I make it faster? There's a bunch of variables there to mess with. But the key is, if you keep optimizing, if you keep doing this, like, it's going to work, which is pretty much amazing. So I'm gonna go for a couple more minutes because then I gotta run.
Yeah.
And just a couple more concepts with this content strategy. So it's easier to optimize for something that you're almost ranking for than it is to capture an entirely new position. So if you're not familiar with SEO, that phrasing might be a little complicated, but what I'm saying is it's easier to go from a position of 20 to a position of 5 in Google search than it is to go from a position of 200 than it is to go from a position of 5. So for your website, you could run your website through one of these tools or go to a free tool like Google Search Console and plug it in and see like, well, I'm not ranking for public speaking coaching at all, but this other service page for virtual conference organizing or something like that, I'm actually on the second page of Google here, and if I were to put in a little bit more work, if I were to add some more content on that page, maybe I could get to a position of 5. So you might be asking like, well, why the heck do positions matter? Well, the data shows that if you're not in the top 5 results in Google, you might as well not even be in the picture. Like, the amount of clicks that happen higher up on the page of Google is like astonishing. So even if you went from a position of 8 to 6, you're already doubling the amount of traffic that you're getting just by nature of click-through rate. So think about that. Maybe it's better to focus on a little bit of optimizing existing content rather than creating new content. So that's also important to keep in mind. So when you're looking to expand into new categories, you could do so a couple ways. You could think about, what would I just what would I kill the rank for in Google? And I kind of call those like dream keywords, like just with your gut, like what are the things I really want to rank for? And putting a plan together with that. You could do competitor analysis and throw your competitor sites into one of these tools and get some ideas. Or you could use one of these tools to just start, they have these neat functions where you could, in SEMrush, for example, put in public speaking coach. I could put that into the search bar, and then I could get additional suggestions. Then that might get your wheel spinning as well. So a bunch of different ways to kind of get new expansion ideas, and that's sort of never ending. So here's a quick screen grab of like a few of my favorite tools. One that I'll throw in here, it's also, they do have a free tier. It's called Hotjar. And it's not an SEO tool, but it is a user experience tool and something that I use on a lot of sites to get heat maps. So you can see where users are clicking. You can see how far down they scroll on your page. You can even do this little creepy thing called video tracking and like record sessions on your site. And that's particularly useful because it's one thing to drive traffic, but it's another thing to convert that traffic. And if you could watch a couple of videos, do a couple of heat maps and learn like, hey, nobody's scrolling to the bottom of this page, but I'm getting a lot of hits on this page. Maybe that says something about your content, or like I'm I watch a couple of videos and it turns out I have a broken link here. I didn't even know about it, or this piece of my site's not working. I didn't even know about it. Hotjar can be really, really good for uncovering that. And if you could fix something that helps you double your conversion rate, you don't have to double your traffic. So if you have 1,000 users and you're converting at 1%, you could double your traffic to double your conversions, or you could double your conversion rate to double your conversion. So just also keep that in mind too. User experience is everything on a site. So yeah, a couple of examples for inspiration. SEO is a simple thing to do, but it is not easy. It takes commitment, it takes a lot of work, but the results can be astonishing. Here's a client that I worked with for multiple years, and this isn't a perfect picture. In fact, the results are even way better now. But they're an e-commerce business where their revenue through just all channels on the website was, they're just kind of getting going with the revenue, and started at about, 30,000 a month, something like that. And by increasing organic search, I think this is in fact pretty out of date, but they're well over 200, 300,000 a month in revenue, and a lot of that attribution, wow, we can bring that right back to SEO. So yeah, a lot of amazing results can come from that. This is an e-commerce example. Here's a B2B example of a site. Also, so it's a very, very big company. I can't reveal either of these, unfortunately, but really good results through SEO, through blogging, through transactional content, exactly what I'm talking about. And the common theme with both of these businesses is production, baby. Like, it's just, let's go. Let's make 10 blogs a month. Let's make 5 pages a month, something like that. Maybe not, doesn't need to be that aggressive, but mind you, these are 2 aggressively growing businesses. So if you can get on a good rhythm, you may not see the results of your content for months and sometimes not even years. But if you can really keep at it, you can turn some massive results out just from SEO alone. So it's a really, really, really great marketing tool. It's something that I've seen executed well with a lot of businesses I work with, something that I've done myself on my own businesses, and it, like, no doubt in my mind, it works. Like, it's a practical marketing tool. SEO works, period, end of story. It's just not an easy thing to do. It's simple, get the right keywords, get the right content, and just keep doing that and optimize it and keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that. So it takes continued effort. That's a hard thing to do as a business if you're busy. So finding a partner may not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. I got a couple of marketing blogs, which you might find interesting, on the gravitatedesign.com site. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I've got a website as well if you want to reach out to me privately there. So
can you
that's kind of my spiel.
Can you share your screen again and go back to some slides? I know that there's one slide I wanted to take another screenshot of.
Yeah, let me pull that up. All right, let me get back over here. Yeah, which one?
Go back. Maybe it was this one. Yeah, I think it's good to know.
Okay.
But just in case, keep going back a little bit. Back some more.
It was the raccoon, wasn't
it? You got me. You got me. Oh, this
maybe this one for backlink building. Yeah, this is also a good one to keep in mind too.
All right. Well, yeah, Steven, I know you got to go. So thank you again for coming on. You can connect with Steven on, sounds like his website, stevenhowsley.com, on LinkedIn. So this has been a blast. I probably should show my screen, probably help a little bit, make us equals here. So yeah, this is a blast. Thank you again for coming on and inspiring us about SEO and research and putting us on the map, especially on Google. And appreciate you coming on. So keep rocking it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, keep on rocking in the free world. Thank you for all that you do and sharing your knowledge as well.
You're welcome. All right. I'll see you all next week, everyone. Cheers.